Alrighty. And all right, let me just. Cool. All right. Mic check. 1-1. Are we all good? All right, let me just.
Oh, whoops! I did it bad. Like I left my own stream on, so there's now an echo. Whoops. Okay. Welcome to the second of the interviews of the Attorney General candidates. We would have had another one, but Sam, like the idiot he was, decided to drop out. And he didn't even tell me. So,
it's a little
that's
awkward.
just a Sam for you. So here we have Tripnixon, the former Lieutenant Governor, who decided to recall so many amazing people. What a horrible person. Well, first, we'll let him say anything he wants to say to start with.
Yeah, I'd just like to begin by thanking Tin Pot News for this opportunity for an impartial interviewer to ask me a handful of questions. But I would also, on a lighter note, would like to say I do hope that this voice chat interview makes people more comfortable doing the same thing and same sort of thing going forward, because I do want to encourage the people of Mayflower to kind of just to enjoy it's a game, don't take it too seriously. But yeah, we can go ahead and get started.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a governor who has never spoken to anyone. It's very sad.
He's spoken to me.
I mean, he has, but he doesn't ever do it in a public voice chat or anything like that.
Yeah, it's always behind.
Hint, Francis. Hint. I know you're watching.
He definitely is.
Anyway, to begin with, why are you deciding to run for Attorney General now?
Actually, that's a very good question. There's a good number of reasons, but the resounding one is there's a clear need for a competent leader within the Department of Justice, someone who's been involved in state affairs for a while and who does know the law.
Are you implying the current one is incompetent?
I think that ship has sailed.
Fair enough.
That's all I'm gonna say on that. But I mean, I've been asked by dozens of random citizens, as well as everyone on my endorsement list, which includes a number of senators, the governor, county executive, et cetera, to make my go the position. And I feel like it's about time for me to return to elected office. But my last experience was great while it lasted, and while I did make mistakes, plenty of them, and I'll be the first to say that, I did definitely learn from it. And I do think that my experience as a lawyer, being the only one to appear before the Supreme Court in open oral arguments against the state government and win, I feel like that speaks to my ability as an attorney. So with those two facts behind me, I decided that, I strongly feel that I'm the most capable and competent candidate for Attorney General, and I couldn't really stand by and let it sink further into the muck that it has allowed itself to fall into.
Well, couldn't you argue that technically speaking, you're not even bar certified? Because you're not.
I mean, if you're getting at the whole name change
thing, it's suspended because you're on the military judiciary.
No, Henry, you're not paying. You are not.
When did you resign that? When did you resign that?
No, I had Francis retract that nomination.
Oh yeah, and then someone complained at me to update the bar database to suspend you, so I did, and then I didn't think about it. I should probably fix that. Let me just
yeah, you really should. Mr. Bar Director, how dare you?
Let me just state bar database, admin database, application database.
Oh dear.
Tripnixon.
Well, anyway, while he fixes that, I had Francis retract my judicial nomination so that I could take my posting as a Judge Advocate General, which makes me the head attorney of the Armed Forces in the state of Mayflower.
Class 2, what an amateur.
What I've been working on.
Sorry. Anyway, that is our fix. That never happened. It's all good.
Your mistake behind us.
I mean, I think my only mistake was ever not voting for you to be on the military judiciary in the first place.
Well, now you can vote for me as your Attorney General.
See, I could do that, but as an impartial interviewer, I am not going to do anything of the sort that could ever, not publicly state anything that would possibly influence my decision, except for the fact that Craig is amazing, and Sam is an idiot, and Awesome is annoying, And you're pretty annoying too. You did try and call me. Let's
Fair
just
enough.
all go with Fluffy. Fluffy's great. Problem solved. There we go.
Mm.
Very impartial.
Yes, Fluffy with his lack of experience in the Department
Hey,
of Justice.
I mean, lack of experience in the Department of Justice is necessarily a bad thing. It means you don't have any experience in corruption. Or did I
Mm.
say that out loud? I'm meant to be interviewing Adam later. Damn. Whoops. Anyway,
You're going to be interviewing
current Attorney General.
the Attorney General with, I believe, a record-breaking number of recall signatures.
Yeah, it is indeed the only record to have passed in a very long time. And the stupid thing is, it was nothing to do with anything he did. It's all it was is because he posted a big paragraph in announcements that everyone thought, oh, that's funny, I'll copy and paste that.
He doesn't represent the morals and the demeanor that an attorney general should have, and people realize
Well,
that.
I'm going on to that. What do you think about all of the accusations that were made against him in the recall petition?
Well, as someone who was formerly lieutenant governor, I can understand a lot of the frustrations, um, and a lot the commonality of a lot of concerns that are brought in most recall petitions. But with regards to Adam, a very fair few of the arguments made against him in his recall petition were based primarily on his conduct as an attorney. To that point, a lot of it was just blatant disregard for citizenry, blatant disrespect of other attorneys. And since that recall petition and since its passing, outside of the original grounds for his recall, a lot of other issues have arisen. Certainly, conversations that I've had with senior DOJ officials that I can't really name because of NDAs. Um, a lot of concerns have been brought to my attention that made me feel even more compelled to run for the office. And honestly, I think we can all agree, just looking from the outside, looking in, that the Department of Justice is in a state of disarray, which is why it's really easy for any attorney to make the argument that literally any prosecution by the DOJ is malicious.
I should know.
Or is
I use
malicious.
that argument in literally all of my cases, and it almost
Yeah, because
always
it's literally
works.
so easy to do.
Well, that's the
Yeah,
problem
because
you
it's
have when you
almost
have to filter cases, because realistically, they can't go from every single tip. But all it takes is
that's
one case that's slightly biased, and you can argue every other case is biased.
and that is a pretty big issue, and one of the ways I plan to address that, excuse me, one of the ways I plan to address that is to make sure that the system that is used to allocate, assign, and pick which cases are prosecuted isn't so much, okay, we're going to take, let's say, of the 15 cases we've gotten submitted, we're going to prosecute these two for these reasons. I'm going to try and shift towards a model where of the 15 cases that were submitted, only two of them contain serious enough crimes to warrant full-on prosecution versus others which can be deferred to alternate programs, either managed ideally by an external agency or something that could really be lowered down to a separate conversation that could be had towards
Well,
rehabilitation.
couldn't you argue with the rather extensive non-disclosure agreements the OJ currently has? Not saying those are legal if you look at the current state laws, but the current non-disclosure agreements basically make it impossible for anyone to realistically know if their tip was handled fairly or not.
I agree 110% with that statement. And in my platform, you'll find that transparency is a huge part of what I'm running for. And those NDAs will be changing. DOJ policy will be a lot more public. And within the limits of ethics rules as stipulated by the bar, a lot more information will be provided about every single case handled by the Department of
Well,
Justice.
pretty much everything is public record anyway these days, so
Right,
the state bar
exactly.
doesn't particularly
But not
rule too much, so long as it's obviously not covered by attorney-client privilege.
correct, yes. But the thing is, as public as that information should be, in practice it isn't, and that's a huge problem. And that's something I definitely plan to take care
Fair enough. And have you got any other particular policy changes in mind?
of. When it comes to specific policy positions, my another pretty large one for me is there was under the current administration of the Department of Justice a lot of micromanagement within the department, and also while the department had the authority to look into other departments. A really big issue was, for example, the attorney general demanding to be added to the IA board of the sheriff's office for virtually no reason. It was that whole situation was a big eyebrow raiser for me. Um, So that's one thing that I'm going to try and stay away from as Attorney General. I do plan on taking the Department of Justice from a position where it's trying to micromanage existing authority and turning it into a department that's more meant to augment the mission of enforcing the law and to support law enforcement rather than to breathe down their necks and threaten them with a case anytime something goes
Yeah,
slightly
it is
wrong.
indeed worth noting that legislative removed the ability for the Attorney General to
Yep,
suspend
and I was
departments.
very, very happy
Yeah,
to see
I'm
that.
not
I'm
sure
very
why that
happy to
ever
see that.
existed in the first place, other than the argument
You
that
know,
I know
you
it's because
know,
DPS had it, and they were like, okay, let's just give it to DOJ because we're giving all the DPS stuff to
right,
DOJ. But why did
right.
DPS have it?
That's
It
exactly,
was
yeah.
don't get me
There was no
wrong.
need for
Don't
the
get me wrong.
Department of Public Safety to
It's
exist.
not necessarily a bad power to have, but there was no oversight on it, and there was also no
Well,
middle ground. It was either all or nothing, which isn't necessarily a good
as
thing.
the former Deputy Secretary of Public Safety, like I can say that a lot of the authority given to that department that was transferred onto the DOJ was completely useless for a third-party entity to have over an existing law
Yeah.
enforcement agency, and it created way too much room for that power to be abused. So I was very happy to see that power sort of stripped away
Well,
from the
that
Attorney
power
General's
literally
office.
said, the Attorney General can order literally anything under threat of suspending the entire
Exactly.
department. There was no
It
restrictions
was
on what they
insane.
could
It
order.
was
Yeah,
insane.
and so
And you saw exactly how that
yeah,
went.
I had to recommend to Tim Shep that he did follow the order to let him on the IA board, only because the law did explicitly say he had to do it. Although equally, I did say, yeah, you've got like a week until the Senate suspend this, so you don't have to add him for long. So that was
Right.
fun.
I mean, let me just say very openly on the record that I don't really plan on meddling in departmental affairs at all. As Attorney General, I recognize my constitutional obligation to render legal advice to heads of principal departments, and I would hope that my interactions with other departments wouldn't have to extend beyond that. But obviously, in cases of criminal prosecution for reasons that may come up, that would have to happen. But I would hope to avoid those, and I'm sure existing department heads would feel the same
It's
way.
definitely very interesting to note how often I get asked by department heads for legal advice when that really is the Attorney General's job. Well, or
Yes,
Solicitor
and
General,
that's
but same difference.
yeah. Well, that's something I hope to alleviate from you, Henry.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think we've worked together in the past on cases, and we've proven to be
relatively
both pretty
competent together,
capable
yeah.
in the realm of the
Although
law.
don't
So
forget,
I hope to be
almost
able to
all
help.
of my cases are going to be against you now. Because almost all of my
Mm,
cases are against criminal prosecutions. Although I generally only take
fair
them when
enough.
they're malicious cases, so hopefully that won't happen anymore. You're going to put
Hopefully
me out of a
that'll be a
job!
concern I'm
God
able to
damn it.
address. Well, then I'm doing my job right, I
True,
guess, huh?
true. Although, I'll have to find
You'll
some
still
cases
you'll still
somewhere.
be MIL/bar director.
Yeah, that's a really boring job though. Should I say that out loud? It's fine. It's fine. He doesn't watch my streams. It's all good. And hey, it's a boring job, but someone's got to do it. And I do believe I do it
Mm,
relatively competently.
fair enough. Fair
Well,
enough. Anyway,
back
back
to
to me.
you, unfortunately. Well, on the subject of the state bar, what do you think of the Attorney General's current practices of the way he hires attorneys?
I'm sorry, that entire sentence just completely cut out on my
It's
end.
always a good sign. So, are you aware
Mm,
that on the last graduation of MIL, literally every
mhm.
single graduate was spam messaged by the Attorney General and members of his office to join DOJ?
That is sort of ridiculous. I personally believe that the Department of Justice as it exists is pretty much it's too big. The number of legal staffers that exist, the number of offices that exist, it's kind of obnoxious and way too unnecessary. But that's what happens when you have someone who comes from NUSA and tries to implement NUSA tactics in the state of Mayflower. We're not. That's not what we're about here. And I can assure you that graduates from MIL will be given a congratulatory letter in a very vague one in the public announcements of DOJ, and we'll call it a day. If they choose to apply to work for us, we'd be happy to have them if they qualify for employment. But we're not going to go out of our way to make them feel uncomfortable or harassed to try and beg them to join the department. And the fact that that has to happen is a testimony to the Attorney General's failure to retain employees and to secure new ones.
Well, you say that, but as someone in the stream chat said, the state does have 4 public defenders. I'm pretty sure they have a few more than that now. But the state bar did release a statistic.
You know, interesting you bring that up. Because I was chatting with I believe someone who's a current public offender the other day in general. And they brought that point up, and I agree wholeheartedly that we do need more public defenders.
Well, there are
And
plans in place by the Supreme Court on the bar that are coming out very
right,
soon that will
right.
do something about that.
I mean, I would certainly hope so, Mr. Bar
Yeah,
Director.
we have a plan. It's not necessarily a good
Yes.
plan, but I don't have any choice in the matter, so it's a plan.
Well, so that kind of leads into a point that I wanted to get at. My plan for the existing, so right now the Department of Justice has an insane number of legal staffers, and it's sort of just to dodge the
It is
PSA.
definitely a
But
bit. Yeah.
I hope to turn that position of a legal staffer into more of a sort of internship. And a policy I plan to implement is any legal staffer who does not attend MIL and pass it within 2 classes of their employment will be terminated. And that is sort of to incentivize them to pursue the law. Because if you're going to be working for the Department of Justice, or if you're going to be working in the realm of law, you really you need a bar
Yeah, it makes a big
certification.
difference, and quite
Uh,
often Letty just doesn't
right,
have enough information that's relevant.
right. I would like to turn the Department of Justice into a means for people to get a good grasp on whether or not they think they'd like to be a lawyer. Not that's not to say that legal staffers are going to be just dipping their toes in the water. I do want them to become more involved, but I want the position of legal staffer to shift more towards an internship style where they're learning while also contributing to whatever offices they're assigned to. But I don't think that the existing system of having dozens of legal staffers that do nigh on nothing and pretty much just earn a paycheck. I don't think that that's a good system, and I don't think anyone benefits from that, including them.
Yeah. Back to the point of the public defenders, it is worth noting that the
Right.
State Bar did release a statistic saying 86% of active attorneys, active being the key word, currently work for DOJ. So that's any attorney
Hmm.
who's actively worked on cases in the past, I think it's 3 months. And 86%,
And
people's right to a fair trial isn't exactly being respected. Yeah,
exactly. And I would like so departmental downsizing is something that is on the table, but I'm obviously not going to just terminate people en masse for the sake of reforms. I do plan on speaking with senior leadership at the DOJ to see who they would recommend would look for employment in the private sector, because I do think that 86% is a ridiculous number, and it for people's right to a fair trial to be maintained, it should ideally be 50-50.
yeah, but obviously
Um,
that's not necessarily
but
practical. But
right, it's not very practical, but I would like to get that number at least from 86 down to 70% of active employees or percent of active attorneys employed by the
yeah,
DOJ. And I do think that's a practical goal, and I do think that would be a goal that would, I mean, realistically, 16% of active attorneys, that's a good
yeah,
number to shift into private practice working as defenders.
yeah. Um, Back to your general qualifications. Don't you
Right.
think that given how essentially early you ended up having to leave the lieutenant governor position, that shouldn't people be concerned you might end up doing the same with other elected positions?
You know, that is a very fair point, and I've actually been asked that by a couple of the other candidates, and I've been asked that by a bunch of the people who endorsed me, the handful that I approached myself and didn't have them reach out to me. And to that point, I made a couple of notes. So when I resigned from lieutenant governor, and I initiated the recall against Francis, a lot of the reasoning behind that wasn't actually what was publicly posted. It was private between me and the governor, which is sort of like he and I are on fantastic terms. But sort of as like an explanation for why I had to leave. It wasn't due to my lack of interest in the position. It wasn't due to my lack of availability to do the job. It was more so based in a lack of, a lack of commonality between me and the current governor, and my firm belief that I was not his ideal pick to serve as his lieutenant governor. Was I a good person to have on his ticket? Yes. I don't think he really had any other viable options. But was I a good pick to actually serve as his lieutenant? I don't think so. Versus with me running as attorney general, I'll be the head of a department rather than the deputy. I'll be in a position to actually enact policy changes as I see fit with the support of senior leadership. And I do think that should be less of a concern. Additionally, I took a good while off of the state of Mayflower after I resigned from my position as lieutenant governor. And I spent a lot of that time um, sort of conversing with the friends I'd made here and sort of trying to figure out where a lot of the more toxic traits that I had, when I first got here in like 2018, I was a very toxic individual. My username was Trip Dubs. I was pod director, and I was arguably the worst one in history. Um, and I've sort of had a lot of conversations to that effect about my biggest fallacies and how I could improve them. And I do think that I've come a long way since then, and I've come even further since I stepped down as lieutenant governor. And the governor would agree with me there, considering I'm the only candidate running for attorney general with his endorsement.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just being spammed about moderation stuff.
Yeah, see, I can't relate.
I mean, one day you might. One day. Always fun.
We'll
Always
see.
fun.
Anyway.
So back to more questions about your qualifications. Given you're so sure that the lots of current cases are often done maliciously, couldn't you argue that rather than taking position in DOJ, it would have been better to get more experience helping the public defender's office, and as such helping them sort lots of the maliciously prosecuted cases, and as such, theoretically, any attorney general would have to stop sending them?
That is a good point, but I think you can definitely agree with the fact that it would be much better to cut off the snake's head than to just try and fight off the snake on the other side.
Yeah.
And which is like, don't get me wrong, I would absolutely be honored by the opportunity to serve as a public defender, and I'm very admiring of their hard work and of everything they do. But I think I would be more effective in administrating justice in a way that's fair and impartial, and in a way that would sort of balance the scales, as it were, as Attorney General than I would be as a member of the Public Defender's Office.
Fair enough. And because I really cannot be bothered to check due to your previous usernames, have you previously run for the office of the Attorney General?
No, I have not. I've never run for Attorney General. I have run 2 Senate campaigns, one from which I was disqualified, one from which I was, I think, like just under the cutoff.
Yeah.
And then I ran for Lieutenant Governor with Francis, which I notably won.
You did. Although the question is, was that due to him or was that due to you?
I like to think it was a team effort, hence both of our names being on the ticket.
Well, speaking of that, if you're running for Attorney General now, I presume that means...
I do not plan to be running for Lieutenant Governor, if that is in question. I have been offered that opportunity by a number of campaigns, and I have turned it down every single time.
Hey, Trip, do you want to run for Lieutenant Governor with me?
That's a separate conversation we can have. No, but I can happily announce, with all due respect to the current governor and governor's office, that I will be running for this shortened term of Attorney General, and I'll be running for re-election after that fact, for a full 180-day term to continue the efforts I plan to begin after I win this Sunday.
And for what it's worth, I'm interviewing a ghost again. You didn't move your mouth for at least 20 minutes.
Well, you know what?
It's okay.
When you have the camera when you have the camera locked, there's no real point in me moving.
Oh yeah,
I was there. All right, okay. Teleport me back in. Bloody hell.
There we go.
Okay,
there we go.
Here I am.
I'm no longer interviewing a ghost. It's all good.
Wonderful. Okay, where were we?
Well, firstly, how do you hear anything I say anyway with those really, really expensive-looking AirPods in?
They're actually they're on transparency mode, so I can hear what you're saying.
I mean, that's quite convenient.
Yeah, they're the new RodePods Pro. I personally really like them. They're very effective. You know, whenever I'm dealing with a particularly belligerent opponent making some very unfounded claims against me, I just set them to noise canceling and I go about my day.
Fair enough. Although hopefully you wouldn't spend taxpayer money on them.
Absolutely.
It's
not.
okay. I don't pay taxes.
No. Oh.
Did I say that on stream?
Well, that's a separate conversation we'll need to have once I'm Attorney
It's okay.
General.
You're not Attorney General yet. Oh, speaking of, do you have any current ongoing cases? I presume the answer to that's no.
Actually, I am the Judge Advocate General, like I mentioned, and I'm currently involved. Funny you ask. The Fluffy Goose, who's one of my opponents in this campaign, he's currently suing the Mayflower National Guard for a reason that I can't really get into, but it just has to do with a discharge. And as the head attorney of the armed forces, I'm representing the National Guard. But since we're both involved in the election, we went to the judge and we've gotten a stay on that entire case until the conclusion of the election. So,
you would have thought you would be.
I'd rather not comment.
You would have thought you would be bypassing your own the current DOJ policies if you continue that case after being Attorney General.
I do not plan to continue that case after Attorney General. I'm actually already talking to my acting Deputy Judge Advocate General, and that is a mouthful, about picking up the case after I do win.
Fair enough. I mean, how has your experience within being an attorney for the National Guard particularly influenced your overall work as an attorney?
Well, I do think it's important as an attorney for me to have a holistic sense of how the law works in Mayflower, and that does include military law. And I was a military judge for a while. I was also the original commanding officer of the current iteration of the military police. And I do think that that solidifies my military law background. Obviously demonstrated my ability as a constitutional lawyer. I've demonstrated my ability as a criminal lawyer. So it just further adds to my credibility and my spheres of knowledge within the law.
Oh, and time for a really fun question because someone just DM'd me a rather interesting accusation that I'm going to presume is rubbish, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Hmm.
Someone is claiming that you blackmailed Sam into stepping down and endorsing you, and they
That is
seem to
very
have
much
no proof, but I thought I'd mention it.
that isn't actually at all what happened. Me and Sam worked together when he was lieutenant governor and I was his chief of staff. And I approached him during the course of this election, and I asked him if he'd be interested in also working together, regardless of how the election turned out, in the Department of Justice. And I can actually read you verbatim the statement. If I could just scroll up here in our DMs. Yes. So I basically made him an offer, and then I said it won't affect the way I campaign or expect you to campaign. We just worked really well together, and I'd love to work with you again. And that's verbatim what I said to
Oh,
Sam. But I can assure you that I did not blackmail him. I would never do that to any candidate in any
was
election.
it part of the original
Um,
plan for one of you to drop out and boost the other one, or not? Because that's quite a common strategy in the
um,
current elections.
that wasn't a strategy starting out, but it was a conversation that we had just to solidify one or the other's campaign in the event that a winner became apparent. But in the interest of transparency, I'm very strong in my belief that I'm the most viable candidate for attorney general. Sam seemed to agree with me, so he dropped out and he endorsed me.
Fair enough. Moving on to something slightly different, what do you think of the current DA's office, and what do you think about the current policies of the Attorney General's office and the way they communicate and work with, or lack thereof these days, the DA's office?
I am so happy you asked me that question, Henry. So me and the district attorney have actually been talking for a few days now about uh, sort of legal independence from the district attorney's office from the State Department of Justice. And I 110% support that effort. I do not think that the current system of having the DA's office under the DOJ is fair to that
Well,
office
technically,
or an
a
effective.
law passed preventing that from ever being the case. However,
Sorry, can you say that one
a
more time?
law passed, I think it was last week, that basically says outright that the DA's office is entirely separate and cannot be influenced
Right,
whatsoever by the AG's office, which Adam really
right,
wasn't very happy about. And you can tell because
exactly.
he
Which
kicked
which
all of the DAs out of the
he kicked
chats.
them all out of the
Yeah.
Discord. Yeah, so that is a conversation we've had. I do want the Department of Justice to absolutely play a supporting role to the district attorney's office and vice versa, but I don't want to, make them feel like they're being subjugated to any sort of, I don't want them to feel like they're inferior to us because there are equals really. They just prosecute levels. They just prosecute on a county level versus us prosecuting and defending on a state
Yeah, I
level.
don't think it helps
Um,
that currently we've had a lot of, well, I'm not going to say arguments, I'm just going to say conflicts between the county board and the state senate. And because of that, lots of people
yeah,
seem to think that the county level and state level government can't really work together, which admittedly is essentially
I,
true.
I don't
But
think that that is the
yeah,
case. I don't think that that is the case, and I do want to see that change. And I do think that as Attorney General, I'll at least be able to make that change happen within the realm of justice administration. And I think the District Attorney General, or sorry, the District Attorney would agree with me to that effect because he has also endorsed
oh,
me.
I did not
Um,
notice that on your list of endorsements. I should probably actually read
yeah.
these things before interviewing people.
Well, you'll find a complete list on the minus a couple of senators on the
Nobody actually reads your manifestos, you know
manifesto.
that, right? No, nobody actually opens
Yeah,
those.
see, that's what I said, right? And Francis was like, "Yeah, but you should really make a manifesto because I'd read it." And I was like, "Okay, I'll literally only do it because I love you."
Oh.
But
And yet you're still
yes,
not running
Francis.
with him for lieutenant governor.
Look, I don't. He and I are fantastic friends, but I don't think that we were the best in terms of supporting each other when it came to professional relationship.
Fair enough.
And I would argue that he would agree.
Well, moving on to some questions from the stream chat. Firstly, we have, I'm pretty sure that's Brooklyn Prime, I'm not sure, asking what are your thoughts on the county board and the current candidates for the county board?
Um, so as a prospective candidate for the office of Attorney General, I don't think it would be appropriate for me to comment on the ongoing election for county board and issue any sort of statements of support. But what I can say is I think that county government is extremely important, which you would think I would because I was a very large part of the impetus to initiate the elections for the current county board when I was lieutenant governor. Um, and I do want to see the county government succeed. They were at one point extremely effective, and I would argue that they have the ability to continue to do so if we elect candidates from the current election who are willing to be active, willing to be passionate, and willing to be genuine in their actions as members of county government. But I don't think it would be appropriate for me to issue any sorts of endorsements or to comment on the ongoing
Fair
election.
enough. And speaking of lower forms of government, well, not lower, but you know what I mean.
How
You
dare you?
know
How
what I
dare you?
meant. Speaking of other levels of government, what do you think of the
Mm.
current lack of municipal governments, even though the laws and so on have been set up and in place for a significant period of time now?
So when I was lieutenant governor, I had that conversation with the MEC. And so essentially the existence of municipal government. Wow, words are just
That was
failing
indeed the
me in my mouth
case.
right now. In terms of the lack of municipal government, that's largely contingent on the success of county government. And so I believe, based on conversations I've had with the MEC, that if this next set of elections for county board go well, and that if they perform to high standards, that we will see municipal governments in the near future. And I would love to see that happen. I would love to see more opportunities for civic engagement for especially newer members of the community. Um, because it's kind of difficult for people who've only been here a number of weeks or a number of months to get involved at the state level. But I feel like with municipal government open alongside county and state, that would open a lot of opportunities for really anyone with a vested interest and passion to pursue public
Yeah,
service.
speaking of newer people struggling to get access to jobs, what do you think of the current Public Servants Act? And what do you think about measures that, well, most complaints seem to revolve around people wanting more jobs. But equally,
Right.
other complaints are people who can't, newer people can't get jobs. And those two things are kind of mutually exclusive. So, what do you think about it?
Well, before answering that question, I'll note that as Attorney General, my job is to enforce the law and to administer justice, not so much to create jobs. It's more of a Francis Underwood question, but I'll answer it anyway. Um, I do think that there are a lot of untapped opportunities for employment within the state of Mayflower. And I do think that legislation exists that might appear to stifle opportunities for people in terms of limiting how many occupations they can have at one time. But I would argue the opposite. I would argue that the absence of having too many employment opportunities for any one person creates opportunities for other people.
Yeah, I would
Um,
agree. It's all about making sure that people can get enough jobs, that everyone
right,
else
exactly.
has the opportunities to get jobs. And
Right.
it doesn't help
I
anyone if people have 10 jobs that they're inactive on 9 of them.
right.
Anyway, what else have we got?
Was that whole question just you shouting out your
Yes,
PSA? Is that what
yes,
that
it
was?
was.
Fair enough.
It was interviewing someone who I knew would agree with me, so I could get some public support from it.
Mm,
It was entirely part of the plan.
mm, fair enough.
That question doesn't help. That question doesn't help. That's not relevant. I can't answer that one on the stream. Okay, what are your opinions on statewide favoritism and just general nepotism?
Actually, this is a very important question for me. So I will be very open and honest and say that I have been the beneficiary of relationships with senior officials in the state of
I
Mayflower
mean,
for
you
a
got this
while.
interview,
A
didn't
lot
you?
of okay, listen to me. A lot of my opportunities in Mayflower, I'm very lucky to have had based solely on the connections I've made with people in other jobs. And everyone can agree that nepotism and favoritism runs rampant in Mayflower. Um, and honestly, it hurts to kind of say this, but it's really difficult to fight against that because in terms of criminal nepotism, in terms of criminal corruption, the existing legislation around that is very, very, very limited. And also, it's really difficult to kind of prove that, hey, this promotion was based on he had a great relationship with his senior
Well,
leadership.
equally, it's very hard to
Because
quantify because sometimes
right, exactly.
sometimes you need to hire someone who you know is good for the job, and that means you've got a
Right.
relationship with them.
That means exactly. So it kind of goes both ways. Like it's difficult to get a job if you don't know people, but it also shouldn't be the only way to get a
Yeah,
job. So the question isn't so much do we have a nepotism problem? It's yes, we do have an issue with promotions being based on relationships. Is it really nepotism? Is a whole separate conversation. But I do think that there should be a more objective system of promotion, of employment, and of just upward mobility in the state of Mayflower.
well, I'm pretty sure there is only one more question that hasn't been answered by you already vaguely or isn't pretty much irrelevant. So, for the
Wait, hang on. I need to just quickly address Chris J. Syndicate. I am actually not black.
I
I
was
am
going to
Arab
ask you that
American.
as the last question, god damn it.
I am Arab American. I'm very proud of that identity. But I'm not, in fact, African American.
For Zena's point, the Attorney General is not Chief Law Enforcement Officer. It's not really.
That would be the governor.
Yeah, it's generally speaking the governor. It depends on the. We don't particularly have one defined in law or defined anywhere, and it's not really.
Right.
And
Traditionally, like at the federal level, the Attorney General in the United States, anyway, is considered the chief law enforcement officer. But within the realm of the state of Mayflower, that's really Francis.
yeah, we don't really have any. We don't have any legislation to back it up whatsoever.
Francis.
Yeah.
Weird.
Well, we would argue it's Francis, but there's nothing that gives him any direct power over law enforcement agencies, with the exception of the fact he's got power over LPD and PPD due to the fact we don't have municipal government. So with the exception of that, he's got no direct control. Well, he's got direct control of MSP, but that's the state one.
The only real realm of authority I have, or I would have as Attorney General, would be in the capacity of just really rendering legal aid to department heads as outlined in the Constitution. I wouldn't really be in a position to be dictating anything to anyone, as much as Adam Stratton wishes that was the case.
Indeed. Well, previously he could, but we fixed that, so it's all good. So, one final question from the people in the stream chat. How are you going to deal with this person in the stream chat being so goddamn sexy? You have to scroll up quite a bit. Let's just say it was Francis H. Underwood. He is pretty.
Yeah. I don't really. I mean, he and I, we've had some heated motions, heated conversations in the governor's manor when we were both governors. But I'm not really in a position to comment on that at this time.
One final question that's also from my DMs. What do you think of allegations that multiple state laws have hidden small print protecting people with timpots?
I know for a fact that those exist because the interviewer has actually told me that he has written legislation to that effect. And I'm very curious to figure out which laws these are.
Only one person has found them so far. It's very impressive.
I just don't feel the need to nitpick existing legislation. I trust the Senate.
All legislation works fine. Just don't look into it in too much detail. Oh, except for the fact you can't charge anyone with arson. It's entirely impossible. which was very great for one of my cases, but not the point. It was quite useful. I should fix that. I should really fix that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not arson.
So
anyway, I'm pretty sure that is everyone covered, with the exception of some stupid questions here and there.
Well, I can take stupid questions. I don't believe there are such things as stupid questions.
Are you going to be on people's asses for tax evasion? There you
go. Well, I don't really believe that tax evasion is something that the Department of Justice needs to worry about in the state of Mayflower.
Good. I agree. I agree with you.
People's asses about tax
I agree with you. Just don't worry about it. But given it's already 1:45, that is pretty much us out of time. So.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for having me, Henry. Thank you to everyone who's been watching. I look forward to all of your support this Sunday, and I look forward to serving as your next Attorney General.
Well, hopefully. Thank you very much for coming on the stream, and there are currently 2 more scheduled Attorney General candidate streams, and there is theoretically an Attorney General debate handled by MPBS, but they seem to have done absolutely nothing to do with it, so I guess I'll be doing that as well. I work for MPBS now, so I guess it's still MPBS doing it. I'm on the IA board, it doesn't count, it's all good. Yeah.
I would imagine that's not going to be a voice chat debate.
I imagine not, because everyone will just interrupt each other, and some of the candidates don't particularly enjoy speaking.
I mean, it would be
I
somewhat
mean,
realistic.
it
But,
would be pretty fun doing a voice chat based debate for something. Although, goddamn, that would be such a pain for me trying to make the camera pan to each person. Oh, I don't want to.
it would just be Adam Stratton yelling toxic things at everyone else. That's all it would be.
Oh, we've got to test that now. I want to do a voice debate now. That's going to be awesome.
Oh
Oh, it
dear.
would be so good, though. It would be so good.
No, I my last debate running for office when I was running for lieutenant governor. That was my peak debate performance.
I mean, we've got the side that even for this chat, there are people who it took a few minutes to figure out who is who. And imagine that with a debate of 5 candidates all spewing the same sort of campaign rhetoric. How are people going to know who is who other than camera panning, which is a bloody pain to do, I point out. Because that means I have to remember who is who. And like, ugh.
Yeah, that involves knowing people. Yeesh.
Indeed. Like, why would I want to know any of you? You're all so annoying. Anyway, that is everything.
Alrighty, well.
Yeah, that's everything covered for today. Thank you for coming onto the stream.
Thank you so
You
much
got
for
twice the
having me.
viewership that Adam got, so either you're more interesting or you manipulated the fact that you could get the governor to shove it in announcements. One of the two.
I took advantage of the opportunities made available to me. Trick is probably gay, but I'm also gay, Calvin. Just for the record, in case you somehow didn't know.
I mean, I am too. I mean, like, have you met Trick? Can you blame me? Anyway.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah. Anyway. Thank you all for watching. We'll be doing another one of these streams, pretty sure tomorrow. What's the current schedule? I would have to check the schedule. The schedule is in my Discord.
I don't know, that's
You
what
can
you
all
told
look in my Discord. You should all join my Discord. It's great. Why did I say I'm gay? Now everyone's going to say Lord Henry gay for the rest of eternity. That's anyway, that's everything covered. It's okay. Everyone else is gay as well. Anyway, I'm going to get my stream demonetized now. It's okay. It's not monetized anyway.
Why would being gay demonetize?
It's
That's
on
a whole other conversation.
YouTube's list of words that gets your stream automatically demonetized.
Are you serious?
It used to be.
Well,
I don't know if it still is. People complained.
I would imagine. Anyway, okay, all right.
Yeah,
we're done.
We're done. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good evening, or night, or morning, depending on what awful time zone you're in. The only real time zone is GMT. See you all around, and good night.